Hello, hello. This is Hana 할머니, Hana grandma. Just going to the other kindergarten year B, quarter 2, episode 1. Just a shepherd boy. So, are you important to Jesus? So, what about your parents or your friend next door? God thinks all people are important, even a little shepherd boy named David. People look at the outside of a person, but the Lord looks at the heart. 1 Samuel 16, verse 7, ICB. God's people think everyone is valuable and important. So, hello, boys and girls. This is Hana 할머니. So, I have a wonderful story for you. Hello, you.
Boys and girls.
Yes, I have a wonderful story for you here. Just a shepherd boy from Grace Link. Just a shepherd boy. Memory verse. Today's memory verse is from 1 Samuel 16:7. It says, people look at the outside of a person, but God looks at the heart. Today's message for today's story is, God's people think everyone is valuable, important. Are you important to Jesus? What about your parents or your friend next door? God thinks that all people are important. Even a little shepherd boy named David. One fine morning, the Lord spoke to his prophet Samuel. The one fine morning, go to Bethlehem and find a man named Jesse. Yes, was the Jesse in Vanita's voice? Was the Jesse? Let's go.
It spoke to his prophet Samuel. Go to Bethlehem and find a man named Jesse who lives there.
Jesse who lived there. Yes, Jesse who lived there. And I have chosen one of his sons to be the next king. Fill your container with olive oil and go. Samuel filled the container with olive oil, just as the Lord had told him to. The Lord had told him to. That when Samuel reached and found out which of Jesse's sons was to be chosen as far as the next king, he would pour some oil on him. And when he arrived at Bethlehem, Samuel soon found Jesse. Then he got ready to make a sacrifice to the Lord. He invited the town leaders to come to the sacrifice, and he invited Jesse and his sons too. And Jesse called 7 of his sons to prophet Samuel, to go. And Jesse called 7 of his sons to go with him. And Samuel looked at the boys and smiled. The oldest of Jesse's son, Eliab, was tall and handsome. Eliab, surely this is the man the Lord has chosen to be king. Surely this is the man. But the Lord spoke to Samuel, don't look at how tall and handsome that man is, he said. Amen. Handsome. I have not chosen him to be king. Then the Lord told Samuel something very important. People see only the outside of a person, but God looks at the heart. Jesse introduced another of his sons to Samuel. Samuel looked at him. The Lord has not chosen this man either, he said. And Jesse introduced the third son to Samuel. Samuel looked at him and shook his head. No, this wasn't the son either. And Each of Jesse's 7 sons was presented to Samuel. The Lord has not chosen any of these men, he said. Then he turned to Jesse. Are these all of your sons? He said. Well, Jesse said, I do have one more. David, he's my youngest son. He is in the field caring for the sheep. In those days, shepherd boys were not important at all. So send for him. Samuel said, we will not sit down until he gets here. David soon arrived, and David loved the Lord. And the Lord loved him even though he was the youngest son. Yes, just a plain shepherd boy. That's the one the Lord told Samuel, anoint him. He is the one who will be king. So Samuel took out his container of olive oil and Samuel took out his container of olive oil and poured some on David's head. Yeah, it is so. And the Lord's Spirit blessed David and gave him power to do the important work that God had planned for him. Yes, God also had planned. Was David a shepherd boy important to God? Was David a shepherd? Of course he was, and you are important to God too. Yes. This will be number 2. Best friends. Who is your best friend? What do you like to do together? Together, David and Jonathan were best friends who loved each other. Jonathan loved David as himself. 1 Samuel 18:3. The two friends love each other. Yeah, let's go. The two friends love each other. Hello, boys and girls. This is Hana Harmony. I have a wonderful story for you. The title is Best Friends. Best Friends. Today's memory verse is from 1 Samuel 18:3. It says, Jonathan loved David as himself. The message for today's story is two friends love each other. Who is your best friend? What do you like to do together? David and Jonathan were best friends who loved each other. Saul, and this is difficult to pronounce to me.
David and Jonathan were best friends who loved each other. King Saul sent for David. Come and live.
King Saul, come and live in the palace. I want you to work for me and become a soldier, the king said. So David moved to the king's beautiful palace. David soon met King Saul's oldest son, Jonathan. David and Jonathan liked each other and became best friends. And let's go shoot arrows. Jonathan would often call to David. Let's go ride horses. David would often say to Jonathan. The people of Israel grew to love David too. And that made King Saul think that the people loved David more than they loved him. And King Saul became so angry that he tried to kill David. Your father is trying to kill me, David told his friend Jonathan. That can't be true, Jonathan exclaimed, but it is. David insisted. Soon a festival will begin and the king will expect me. King will expect me to be there. So festival will begin and the king will expect. I will go see my brothers 2 days after the festival. I will return and hide in the field. I will go see my father. When your father sees that I'm not at the festival dinner, tell him that I went to visit my family. When your father sees me, if he gets very upset, you will know that he's trying to kill me. All right, Jonathan answered, hide by the stone pile in the field. If my father is really trying to hurt you, I will tell you. Here's my plan. I will shoot arrows over by the stone pile. Then I will send my servants to get the arrows. Jonathan said, yes, that's the plan. If I shout to the boy and say, go farther, the arrows are ahead of you, then you will know that my father really does want to kill you. And you need to run away to here. Run away to be safe. To here. Yes. And when King Saul sat down at the festival dinner that day, he saw that David's chair was not empty. David's chair was empty, but he didn't say anything. The next day at dinner time, the king saw that David's chair was still empty. He turned to Jonathan and said, where is David? David went to visit his family during the festival. Jonathan answered. King Saul's face turned red with anger. And don't you think that I know you want David to be king? He screamed. Go get David, so I kill the David. Yes, go David, so I can kill him. Go get David. Jonathan knew then that his father really wanted to do such a terrible thing. The next morning, Jonathan went to the field. He took out an arrow, aimed it near the stone pile, and shot it. Jonathan's servant boy ran to find the arrow. Run, father, Jonathan called loudly. The arrow is ahead of you. When the boy came back, Jonathan sent him back to town. Then he ran. David said goodbye. 저기 할 거야. 모밀국수 비빌 거야. 시원한 거. 밥도 지금 없는데. We may not be able to see each other for a while, Jonathan said. We may not be able to see each other for a while, Jonathan said, but we will still be there. We will still be friends, he promised. We will be friends forever, said David, and they were. Yes. 지금 더운데 그걸 하면은 더 더울 거 아니야. 2, 3. Caught in a cave. Has anyone done something unkind to you? What did you do? David shows us how to do good to someone who is mean to us. We can do good even when others aren't nice to us. Let us not become weary in doing good. Galatians 6:9. Yes, here. Hello, boys and girls. This is Hana Harmony. I have a wonderful story called Caught in a Cave from the Grace Link. Today's memory verse is from Galatians 6:9. It says, let us not become weary in doing good. Let us not become weary in doing good. The message for today's story is, we can do good even when others aren't nice to us. Has anyone done something unkind to you? What did you do? David shows us how to do good to someone who is mean to us. which means to us. The soldiers scrambled down. The soldiers scrambled down the mountainside. He slipped on some gravel. Then he got his balance and ran on. Gravel or gravel. Gravel or gravel. Yes.
He slipped on some gravel. Then he got his balance and ran on.
Yeah, gravel. He slipped on some gravel. Then he got his balance and ran on. Gravel. Slipped on some gravel. Then he got his balance. Saul and his soldiers are coming. Saul and his soldiers are coming, he said to David. King Saul is coming with thousands of soldiers. King Saul, no longer a boy, David and his 600 men quickly climbed up to a big cave where they could hide. 600. The cave was very dark and still. David and his men crouched behind the big boulders or behind the big boulders.
David and his men crouched behind big boulders.
Big rocks, big boulders and big rocks. Crouched behind them. They barely breathed. Also is hard.
Big boulders or big rocks, they barely breathed.
Barely breathed. And David and his men had been running away from King Saul and his soldiers for months. King Saul had made it known he wanted to kill David. So then away, David and the one more. Yeah, I want to hear the front.
David and his men had been running away from King Saul and his soldiers for months.
From months. It's so hard to me to pronounce. Barely breathed. King Saul had made it known he wanted to kill David. Why? Because King Saul was jealous of David's victories in battle. The people loved David. They even made up a song about him, comparing him to King Saul. And King Saul didn't like that one bit. Just a bit.
Didn't like that one bit, huh?
One bit, huh? Suddenly a man walked into the cave, a very tall, big man. It was Saul. The king turned and faced the entrance of the cave. He squatted down and pushed his robe out behind him. He squatted down. Yeah. Squatted, right?
He squatted down and pushed his
robe out behind him. Yes. Squatted down. Look, one of the hiding men whispered into David's ear. The Lord is giving you a chance to kill King Saul. I cannot, David replied. For God has made him king. I cannot harm him. And then David took his sharp knife out of his belt. He crept slowly and without any sound towards King Saul. Crept slowly. Then he reached out and cut off a piece of the king's robe. David crept back to his men. Crept back. And then he reached out and cut off a piece the king's robe and crept slowly and crept back without sound towards King Saul. Then King's robe, David crept back to his men. But then he began to feel bad about cutting the king's robe. He began to feel bad about cutting the king's robe. When Saul stood up and left the cave, David followed him. My lord, the king, he shouted. My man and I could have killed you, David said, but I will never hurt you because you are chosen by the Lord. Yeah. Look, David shouted as he held up the piece of material he had cut from the king's robe. This proves that I could have hurt you. Is that really David? Saul called back. You are a better man than I am, he said with tears running down his face. You have been merciful. I know that you will surely be the king of Israel after me. Yeah, he knows. Just promise me that you will not hurt my family. You will not hurt my family. Just promise me. So King Saul and his 3,000 soldiers began the long trip back home. This is the fear story too. Do anybody goes like that? David is a really merciful man. And then Korah promise keeping. This episode caught in a cave, and the 4 here is the 4 promises are for keeping. Promises are for keeping. People who love Jesus keep their promises. We have promised by the Lord that we will be friends. 1 Samuel chapter 20, verse 42, ICB. Yes, here. The hello, boys and girls. This is Hana Harmony. I have a wonderful story for you. The promises are for keeping. Promises are for keeping. Today's memory verse is 1 Samuel 20:42. It says we have promised by the Lord that we will be friends. The message for today's story is people who love Jesus keep their promises. King David looked up at the blue sky. The king was remembering his youth. He thought about all the days he had spent taking care of his father's sheep. He remembered the special day when the prophet Samuel had come and had poured the olive oil on his head and told him that God had chosen him to be the next king. And David remembered the days he had lived in the palace with King Saul. Then David thought about King Saul's son Jonathan. And Jonathan, his best friend, David sighed. Jonathan had died as a soldier in battle. David missed him so much. He remembered how they used to gallop their horses together, how they used to shoot the arrows, how they had promised to be friends forever. Then he remembered that he had promised to be kind to Jonathan's family. And suddenly David had a new thought. I wonder, is anybody from Jonathan's family still alive? King David sent for Ziba, who had been a servant in Saul's house. Ziba ran to the palace and bowed before the king. Is anyone from Saul's family still alive? King David asked Ziba. If there is, I want to show them God's kindness. Yes, Ziba answered. One of Jonathan's sons is alive. Mephibosheth says he crippled lad. He's a crippled lad, Mephibosheth. Yeah. So we will bless the Jonathan's sons alive.
Mephibosheth is a crippled lad.
Mephibosheth is a crippled lad. Mephibosheth. One more, Mephibosheth.
Jonathan's sons is still alive.
Jonathan's
Mephibosheth is a crippled lad.
He was the lad. Mephibosheth. He was hurt as a child and is crippled in both feet. King David smiled. I want to see him, he said. So the king sent servants to bring Mephibosheth to the palace. Mephibosheth's stomach began to hurt when he heard King David's message. He knew that his grandfather, King Saul, had treated David badly. Why did King David want him? Was the king going to hurt me? He knew he couldn't say so, but he really didn't want to see King David. When he arrived at the palace, he bowed very low before the king. I am your servant, he said. Don't be afraid, David said kindly. Your father, Jonathan, was my best friend. That's the reason I want to come in our palace. I'm giving you all the land that once belonged to your grandfather Saul. And I want you to live here with me at the palace. The Mephibosheth's mouth dropped. With a surprise gasp. Why do you want to do such nice things for me? Because I loved your father very much, the king answered, and I promised him I would take care of his family. So it was the Mephibosheth's move to the palace. That David always treated Mephibosheth as if he were his own son, and soon the two became good friends as well. Yes, that's the really beautiful story still coming through. Yes. 4-5. For there are no 5-8. Yeah. The 3 times a day. Here is the hello. Yeah. Here is the Old Testament story from here. So, do you like talking to your friends? You can talk to Jesus just like a friend anytime, anywhere, about anything, just as Daniel did. Memory verse, Daniel prayed, giving thanks to his God. Daniel 6:10. We worship God when we pray. Hello, boys and girls. This is Hana Harmony. I have a wonderful story for you from Grace Link. Yes, Grace Link for 3 times a day. You guessed Daniel 6:10. Daniel prayed, giving thanks to his God. So, giving thanks to his God. Today's message for story is we worship God when we pray. Do you like talking to your friends? You can talk to Jesus just like a friend, anytime, anywhere, about anything, just like Daniel did. The new king Darius sat on his throne surrounded by servants. These are my orders, he began. I'm going to divide my kingdom into 120 parts. Each part will have a prince to help me rule over it. And there will be 3 men in charge of the princes. Daniel will be one of them. Some of the princes the king chose didn't want Daniel to be in charge. Let's get him in trouble, they whispered together secretly. We will catch him doing something wrong and we will tell the king. But although they watched Daniel carefully every day, they could not find him doing anything wrong. But although, I have a new plan, one prince announced. He huddled together with the other jealous men, and then they went to the king. And long live King Darius, the princess said, bowing low. We think you should make a new law that for the next 30 days the people can only pray to you. And if anyone disobeys, they should be thrown into the lion's den. The King Darius liked to have people bow down before him, and if the king made a law, it could not be changed. So he agreed. The princess smiled as they left the king. Now we can catch Daniel. Everyone knows that Daniel prays 3 times a day with the windows wide open. And the princes watched it. As soon as they saw Daniel praying not to the king, but to his God, they hurried to the king. Daniel is still praying to his God, they reported. King Darius now realized that the prince had asked him to make the law so they could get rid of Daniel. But King Darius liked Daniel, yet still the king had made the law, and he had to keep it. Daniel had to go into the lion's den. May the God whom you serve save you, the king exclaimed to Daniel as the soldiers took him away. All that evening, King Darius worried about Daniel, and when he went to bed, he couldn't sleep. As soon as the sun peeked over the land, the king hurried to the lion's den. Daniel, has your God saved you from the lions? He shouted. O king, live forever. Daniel called back. My God sent his angel to shut the lion's mouth. King Darius smiled as the soldiers lifted Daniel out of the lion's den. He hurried back to his palace and wrote a letter to be read to everyone in his kingdom. Daniel's God is the living God, the king wrote. His God can rescue and save people. His God saved Daniel from the lions. King Darius' law couldn't stop Daniel praying. Lions couldn't stop Daniel from praying too. The God heard Daniel's prayers, and God hears your prayers too. Thank you, Lord. You always listen to our prayer too. So let's go to episode 9. On episode 9, a special quote. Think about the favorite gift your mom or dad has given you. Joseph's father gave him a special gift, and so did your heavenly Father will give good things to those who ask him. Matthew 7:11 ICB. God gives us good gift because he loves us. Hello, boys and girls. This is Hana Harmony. I have a wonderful story for you called a special quote. This comes from the Grace Link. Today's memory verse is from Matthew 7:11. Your heavenly Father will give good things to those who ask him. Your heavenly Father will give good things to those who ask him. The message for today's story is God gives us good gifts because he loves us. Think about a favorite gift your mom or dad has given you. Joseph's father gave him a special gift, and so he did. So did God. Joseph stuck his whole head down into the water and laughed. Ha ha ha. He came up sputtering and laughing. The cool water felt so good. Taking care of sheep all day was a dusty business. Joseph shook his head back and forth. Little drops of water flew everywhere. Hey, watch what you said. Yeah, watch what you are doing. His brother Reuben yelled at him. Where is my son Joseph? Jacob had many sons, but he loved his son Joseph most. And Father Jacob was old, and his young son gave him a lot of happiness. Joseph wasn't like his 10 older brothers. They quarreled and sometimes caused their father problems. But Joseph was gentle, and he always told the truth. He was full of joy, and he made his father smile. Joseph hurried to see what his father wanted. Jacob had a special gift for Joseph, a beautiful new coat made from many different colors. It was the kind of a ruler or other special person would wear. Yes. Made from many different colors. Joseph slipped his arms into coat. Slipped his arms into. He ran like a kind of ruler. Slipped his arms into the coat. Excuse me. Slipped his arms. He ran his hand over the soft fabric. Thank you, Father, he whispered. He especially liked the bright colors. Joseph's big brothers frowned at him. Why was he so special? Why did he always get presents from their father? The jealous brothers grumbled among themselves. Jealous brothers. Yeah. I want to
get presents from their father. The jealous brothers grumbled among themselves.
Yeah, jealous brothers grumbled. One night, Joseph had an unusual dream. The next day, he told it to his brothers. We were in the field tying bundles of wheat. Wheat together. We were in the field tying bundles of wheat together. My bundles stood up, and your bundles of wheat bowed down to mine. Wow. Do you really think we would ever bow down to you? His brothers scolded. His brothers scolded. That's right? Yeah, scolded. So grumble and scolded.
You? His brothers scowled.
Scowled. His brothers scowled. Yes, it grumbled and scowled. It is hard to pronounce. Again, they grumbled among themselves. Later, Joseph had another dream. I saw the sun, the moon, and 11 stars bowing down to me, he said. Father Jacob gently scolded. I don't familiar with this kind of the word.
Scolded Joseph.
Scolded, grumbled. Do you really think that your mother and your brothers and I will bow down to you? He asked. No one understood what Joseph's dreams meant, but Jacob did not forget. Years later, he would remember and understand. Joseph was blessed to receive many gifts from God. God blessed Joseph with the gift of dreams that he would one day understood. God guided, understood or understand. Yes, to understand. God blessed. God guided Joseph's mind and gave him good thoughts. God guided. God loves you and blesses you with many gifts too. He gives you good thoughts. He will always help you do the right things. Yes, he always gives us the right things. So 10. Who cares? Who cares? Is there anything you are afraid of? Joseph was afraid, but he decided to trust in God. Memory verse, when I am afraid, I will trust in you. Psalm 56, verse 3, NIV. When we are afraid, we can trust in God. Yes. Hello, boys and girls. This is Hana Harmony. I have a wonderful story for you. Yes, here the chord "Who Cares" from the Grace Link. Today's memory verse is from Psalm 56, verse 3. It says, "When I am afraid, I will trust in you. I will trust in you." The message for today's story is, when we are afraid, we can trust in God. We can trust in God. Is there anything you are afraid of? Joseph was afraid, but he decided to trust in God. One day, Joseph's older brothers took the family's great flocks of sheep far away from home. So Joseph, The sheep had eaten all the grass in the nearby fields, so the brother had to find a new green fields where the sheep could eat. Many days passed, and the brothers had not returned. I want you to go find your brothers. Father Jacob said to Joseph, see if they needed anything, then come back and tell me if they are all right. Yes, Father, I will go at once, Joseph said. He packed some food for the long trip. Finally, ready, he put on his beautiful coat and started out. He walked and walked and walked. He took several days to find his brothers. One morning, his brothers looked across the fields and saw Joseph coming toward from the far, toward them. One morning, here comes that dreamer, one brother hissed. Why is he here? Asked another. Then they talked about bad things they could do Joseph, and they made plans, terrible plans. Have you here? Here you are, Joseph called, running up to his brothers. Hello, brothers. But his smile slid right off his face as they grabbed him roughly. At first, they pulled off Joseph's beautiful coat. Yes, why he just wear his beautiful coat. At first, pulled off a big hole in the ground. Then they pushed him into a big hole in the ground. A hole so deep he couldn't climb out. The brothers returned to their campfire and sat down to eat. But Joseph's brother Reuben didn't feel right about what they had done. So he secretly planned to pull Joseph out of the deep hole later and send him home. Reuben thought about it as he went to the fields to care for the sheep. While Reuben was gone, another brother, Judah, looked out across the valley. Here come some traders, he exclaimed. Here's a way to get rid of that dreamer. Let's sell Joseph to them. He can be their slave. So that is what the brothers did. They sold Joseph to the traders for 20 pieces of silver. At first, Joseph was frightened. He shivered and shook, and shivered and shook. Then he cried. That's the shivered and, yes.
Very frightened. He shivered and shook, and then he cried.
And then shivered and shivered and shook. This is also so.
Very frightened. He shivered and shook, and then he cried.
And shivered and shook. Then he thought of his father and of the many stories his father had told him about how God had always cared for him. Joseph decided to trust God to take care of him too. He didn't understand why these bad things was happening to him, but he trusted God to be with him wherever he went. You can trust God to be with you too. He will be with you wherever you go, whatever you do. He loves you and wants you to trust him. Yes, wherever you go, what you do. And 11. Almost the last one. Joseph goes to jail. Can you think of the best thing that's ever happened to you? What about the worst thing? Did you know God was with you both times, just as he was with Joseph? Nothing can separate us from the love God has for us. Romans chapter 8, 38, 39. ICB, God is with us in good times and in bad time too. So hello, boys and girls. I have an wonderful, this is Hannah. I have an wonderful story for you called Joseph Goes to Jail from the Grace Link. Joseph goes to jail. Today's memory verse is from Romans chapter 8, verse 38-39. Nothing can separate us from the love God has for us. Love God has for us. The message for today's story is God's with us in good times and in bad. Can you think of the best thing that's ever happened to you? What about the worst thing that's ever happened? Did you know God was with you both times, just as he was with Joseph? Joseph couldn't believe it. Yesterday he had been in charge of all of his master's house. Today his master had thrown him in jail. Joseph knew he had not done anything wrong. And he knew one more very important thing. Yes. He knew that God was with him and would take care of him no matter where he was. The chief jailer gave Joseph work to do. Joseph worked without complaining, and every day the chief jailer saw that Joseph did things right. Before long, he put Joseph in charge of all the other prisoners. One morning, Joseph noticed that two of the prisoners looked worried. One had been the king's drinker, bakers. Yeah. The other had been the king's baker, wine. The king had become angry and had them both put in prison. What's the matter? Joseph asked them. We had a strange dream last night. The cupbearer answered, scratching his head. We don't know what the dream mean. We don't know what the dream we don't know what they mean. God is only one who can explain dreams. Joseph said, tell me your dreams. I dreamed I saw a vine with 3 branches. The cupbearer replied. There were grapes on the vines, and I squeezed the grape juice into the king's special cup and gave it to him. And Joseph said, God will help me explain the dream to you. In 3 days, the king will set you free, and you will go back to work in the palace. And when you see the king, please tell him about me. Joseph begged. I have done nothing wrong. I shouldn't be in this prison. Then the baker said, let me tell you my dream. I dreamed there were 3 bread baskets on my head. There were fancy breads and cakes for the king in the top basket. But the birds were eating the food. Joseph prayed silently. I will explain the dream to you. In 3 days, the king will punish you, and you will die. In 3 days, the king had a birthday. He gave a big party. During the party, he sent to the jail for his cupbearer and baker. The king gave the cupbearer his old job back, but punished the baker just as Joseph had said. Joseph waited and waited to hear that the cupbearer had told the king about him. But the cupbearer forgot about Joseph. Joseph was sorry that the cupbearer had forgotten him, but he knew that God loved him. That Joseph trusted God to take care of him even in jail. Yeah. He always waited patiently. And 12. Yes. Have you ever been Have you ever been asked to do something that was really hard? Joseph was asked to tell Pharaoh about some dreams, but he couldn't do it alone. I cannot do it, but God will. Genesis 41:15. God can help us do anything. So hello, boys and girls. This is Hana Harmony. So I have one wonderful story for you. Wonderful story for you. Here, the chord of wise choice from Grace Link. Today's memory verse is from Genesis chapter 41, verse 16. It says, I cannot do it, but God will. The message for today's story is God can help us do anything. Have you ever been asked to do something that was really, really hard? Joseph was asked to tell Pharaoh about some dreams, but he couldn't do it alone. The morning light poured through the palace window. His head ached. Oh, so he had not slept well at all. So why? That's because he had two very strange dreams, two very. Bring the wise men to me, he called to his servant. The wise men listened carefully as Pharaoh told them about his strange dreams. They whispered together and shook their mouths. We don't know. The strange dreams. They whispered together and shook their heads. We don't know what the dreams mean, they admitted. Suddenly, Pharaoh's cupbearer suddenly stepped forward. So cupbearer stepped forward. When I was in prison 2 years ago, the cupbearer began. I had a strange dream too. A young man named Joseph told me what my dream meant, and everything happened exactly as he said it would. Pharaoh pointed toward the door. Bring this Joseph to me. The guard rushed to the jail. They waited impatiently as Joseph shaved and put on clean clothes. Then they hurried him to the king. I had a dream, Pharaoh told Joseph. No one here can tell me what it means. What it means. But I hear that you can explain dreams. So tell me what my dream means. Joseph answered truthfully, I cannot explain the meaning of dreams, but God will tell me, I will tell you. So I dreamed I was standing on the riverbank, Pharaoh said. I saw 7 beautiful fat cows come out of the river and begin to eat grass. River. Then 7 skinny cows came out of the river, and the 7 skinny cows ate up the 7 fat cows. Then I had another dream, Pharaoh continued. I saw 7 plump heads of grain growing out of a stalk. Stalk or stalk? Just wait. Yes, we're gonna hear the stalk.
Continued. I saw 7 plump heads of grain growing out of a stalk.
Stalk. Plump stalk. Yes. Then 7 more thin, ugly heads of grain grew out of the same stalk. Yes. And then thin heads of grain swallowed up the plump, full heads of grain. Both the dreams mean the same thing, Joseph began. God is telling you what he is going to do. There will be 7 good years for growing food, and then there will be 7 years of hunger because food will not grow. You need to choose a man who is wise, Joseph said. Let him store the extra food that grows in the 7 good years. So there will be food during the 7 years of the famine, 7 years of famine, and the people will not die of hunger. Pharaoh was pleased to hear Joseph's ideas. He took his own ring off his finger and put it on Joseph. He put a gold chain around Joseph's neck. You are in charge of all the land of Egypt, Pharaoh proclaimed. You are second in command under me. So Joseph began his new work. He rode around the land and arranged to store all the extra food that grew in the 7 good years. Joseph was not in jail anymore. He was working for the king, but Joseph knew one thing was the same. God could take care of him in the palace, just as he had in the jail. Palace.
One thing was the same. God would take care of him in the palace, just as he had in the jail.
Palace, not palace. Palace. So hard. Yeah. Palace. So the last one, 13. Joseph found to forgive his brothers. Has anyone done something really, really mean to you? Did you forgive them? Was it easy to do? Joseph's brothers had done something really, really mean to him. Forgive as the Lord forgave you. Colossians chapter 3, verse 13. 3:13, Colossians. Yes, this is really good. We can forgive others. We can forgive others. Hello, boys and girls. This is Hana Harmony. So I have a wonderful story to tell you. Joseph forgives his brothers from Grace Link. Today's memory verse is from Colossians chapter 3, verse 13. It says, forgive as the Lord forgave you. The message for today's story is we can forgive others because God forgives us. Has anyone done something really, really mean to you? So did you forgive them? Was it easy to do? Was it difficult? Joseph's brothers had done something really, really mean to him. Joseph looked at the 11 men standing uncomfortably in front of him. The men were strangers to the other people in this palace, just strangers who had journeyed to Egypt to buy some foods. Yes, to buy during the famine. Just a stranger. But Joseph knew exactly who the men were. They were his brothers. Joseph's mind flooded with memories. He remembered how his 10 older brothers had treated him. He remembered the horrible day they had pushed him into the big hole in the ground. He remembered. Then pulled him out only to sell him to be a slave in Egypt. So it was time to tell his brothers that the men they were standing or front of Joseph, standing in front of, yes, the man who looked like an Egyptian prince and ruled all of Egypt. The second only to the king was really their very own brother Joseph. Go, Joseph said to his servants. Soon only his brothers were left in his room. Tears began to stream down Joseph's face. I'm Joseph, he exclaimed. I'm your brother. Is my father still alive? He cried. Gasped. The brother's mouth dropped open. Could this very important ruler of Egypt really be their brothers? Their brother? Suddenly they were so afraid. What would Joseph do to them? Oh my, that had been so mean to him. That had been so mean to him. They had sold him to be a slave. Come closer to me, Joseph said. He knew his brothers were frightened. Come closer to me, Joseph said. He knew his brothers were frightened. I am your brother, Joseph. You sold me to be a slave in Egypt, but don't worry. God is really the one who sent me front. He sent me here to save your lives during this famine. Go home quickly, he said. Tell my father that I'm ruler over all Egypt, second only to the king. Bring him here, and your children, your grandchildren. That you will live near me, and I will take care of you during the years of famine. Then Joseph and his brothers talked for a very, very long time. And Joseph told his brothers over and over that he forgave them for what they had done. And Joseph had lots of questions about his family. Reuben sighed a big sigh. He felt good. He felt forgiven. Reuben looked around at his other brothers. He listened as they interrupted each other to tell Joseph happy stories about them. Happy stories about their children. He listened. Reuben knew his brothers felt forgiven too, that they would bring their father and their families to Egypt, and Joseph would finally see his father again. Yes. Yeah, that's the end of the story of Joseph and Jacob's story. So let's go the other story, but this will be done here. So I will go to my camera here. I will see your eyes now. So you see my eyes through these eyes of camera. So God also watch you through this camera too. Yes. Thank you, brothers and sisters, other boys and girls. So you always pray with me, prayer together with us. Thank you, Lord, that you take care of us every time, every second, like your eyes, like through angels watch over us. Thank you, bye. See you then. Yes, the end stream through your eyes here. Yes.